Hey everyone, I'm Will Sheldon, partner at Expedition. And today we are thrilled to be joined by Søren Schønnemann, CEO at Factbird. When we at Expedition are meeting with high growth software companies with bootstrapped, capital efficient routes here in Europe, one topic that is almost always top of mind is expanding in the US. So today we are going to deep dive on that, given Factbird's remarkable growth in North America. Søren, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Will.
Before we turn to the US, Søren, just to level set for people who don't know, what is Factbird? And maybe give everyone a sense of your scale and growth as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. But a little bit surprised about the question. Everyone should know who Factbird is and what we do. But for the very few that do not know who Factbird is a all-in-one manufacturing intelligence suite with a piece of technology that allows you to boost efficiency, reduce waste, engage with your workforce in a very powerful way. In essentially build up of 3 applications to improve your shop floor operations, allow you to know what's going on, what's happening on the shop floor. It's streaming data, it's visualizing real-time production data for better decision-making, mainly focusing on OEE, but also SOPs, QA, compliance elements, planning your schedule, everything you need to drive efficiency up and waste down. So that's essentially Factbird in a nutshell. We stem out actually of a lean manufacturing consultancy firm here in Copenhagen. They were tasked many moons ago of identifying waste and eliminating waste at a brewery south of Copenhagen. In the last 3.5 years, we've gone from 1.5 million euros in ARR to just around 10 million euros. We've gone from 8 people to around 100 people. We've doubled our ARR in the last 18 months. So since you guys came on board at the end of 2023, and since this is about the US, we've got about 50% of our net ARR deriving out of the US, North America, and approximately 40% of our total ARR in North America. So it's been a global mindset and a global strategy from the start. However, headquartered, it does have some benefits, and therefore, in the early days, that's also where we saw the lion's share of the growth.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Søren. And to give folks a sense, you mentioned the brewery outside Copenhagen there. What kind of customers are you working with at Factbird today?
Yeah. Good question. So, the production environment, they all have the requirement and the need for being able to monitor what is the status of the line right now, what is my biggest problem, what do I need to do about it. So essentially, we're agnostic to the industry. However, over time, we've seen a few industries stand out from the crowd more significantly. We focus on food and beverage and packaged consumer goods as the primary ICP, but we do also see strong interest in pharmaceutical as well as industrial equipment.
Fantastic. Well, Søren, you mentioned that today the US is 40% of Factbird's ARR. That's up dramatically in the last 18 months or so. It's your fastest growing region, I think it's fair to say as well. Let's rewind the clock. So starting as a business out of Copenhagen, Denmark, how did you get started in North America in the first place?
Yeah, when I think back, we were actually quite fortunate to get a fair amount of early stage enterprise customers. And obviously, a lot of them would have a strong requirement of our US presence to support their operations and their business. But we also saw a quite significant amount of inbound demand from US manufacturers looking for the like of solution that we were providing. So faster, lighter digitalization in comparison to the traditional MES systems. So that led us in this dual strategy to focus towards North America. And that became the trigger point for our conversation on moving to the US.
Got it. So to play that back, there was a pull from existing large European enterprise customers who had US business to take you there. And at the same time, there were US potential customers looking for a solution in Factbird space, came across you and wanted you guys to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a ton of technology in the market. And, in many cases, the technology available is quite complex. And what we offered at that time, as well as what we offer now, is quite simplistic in that sense.
Mhm.
And there's still a strong demand in the market for this around, the area where we are.
Got it. When we speak with European software companies that are expanding into the US, there are a bunch of different potential archetypes you could follow. You could move there. Maybe one of our top salespeople could move there. You could open a brand new office and hire people locally. You could try and do it all remotely. You could acquire a company in the US. There's so many different options.
Yeah.
What approach have you taken?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think the discussion in terms of which approach to take, it's a battle many have failed at, right? The approach that we took was we actually moved one of our OGs out of Denmark to the US. The employee number one, we were quite lucky at the time, and timing is everything, but there was private circumstances that led to the opportunity of expatriating employee number one. So transferring across the Atlantics, cultural as well as domestic insights, technical insights to the market. And that opportunity or those circumstances gave us the opportunity to sort of, with de-risking, moving cultural, technical insights to the US whilst we were sorting out all of the red tape that it requires. Setting up an office, getting registered, talking to the tax authorities, finding a bookkeeper, all of that we sorted out with one of our key employees. And then at that early stage, when we just had employee number one in the US, we serviced the market remotely from Denmark, whilst we were sort of validating the demand for the first 12 months this way. So you could almost talk about a hybrid model. And once we were validating the market, it's a key point actually, product validation in the market. As we were testing the market, we could then add more capacity to the market in terms with our growth. So we had a base of, let's say, 10, 12 customers that required our presence, support, growth, which we managed this way. And then we just added as we grew, essentially.
And when was that your first employee number one moved over?
This was 2021.
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so in that environment of moving someone over, there's often then a topic of where do you land? And that could be driven by the individual moving. It could be driven by you being close to customers, being to talent. Again, how would you advise other leaders to think through that question of where do you plant the flag?
Yeah. Well, the typical answer would be, asking, well, where should we set up an office, right? And they'll go, well, Manhattan or California or Austin. For us, we started out by mapping the existing customers' concentration, and we're trying to identify high potential manufacturing clusters where it would make sense. Bear in mind that we were kind of forced in the early days to sort of, the location of that person. However, we did map out these things. We also considered time zone overlaps in order to think about how can we facilitate this cross-Atlantic collaboration that needs to be in place. We evaluated the talent availability for target roles in sales, customer service, engineering, development. We looked at cost of living cost, ease of travel in relation to this for major hub, and a few areas came up. And now when you're talking about manufacturing is obviously happening all over, but there are these clusters. For us, we ended up setting up the first location just outside New York in New Jersey, 45 minutes outside of Manhattan, which was in close proximity to New Jersey, Newark Airport for international travel, but also domestic travel. And since then, as the team has grown, and we're just short of 20 people now, it's been a remote strategy. So we have, let's call it office locations. She had office locations in Chicago, in Austin, in the original location outside of New York, and we've got people more or less all over the countries supporting this.
Really smart. And thinking back, Søren, I mean, it sounds smart when you say it. Was that the right approach in hindsight, or would you have done it differently if you could go again?
Well, we actually led with a belief that we need an American headquarter, right? So put a pin in the needle, and we would have everyone traveling in. That was not the right decision. It was not a correct understanding of the difference between the North American and the European market. COVID completely disrupted the way of working in the old sense, which in many aspects was the same as the European sense. So the American market is way more scattered and customized and used to remote working. So we were actually initially starting to pull people and requiring that we could only find the talents around New Jersey, and they all had to travel to the office and work the way that we did here in Europe. And what happens? You drive the wrong culture, you have resistance, went away from that and have since allowed remote working and subculture and a way of operating, a way of working that is way more suited to the North American market and what they're used to. Having said that, I'm a strong believer, and we're a strong believer in the social glue that happens when you're together in the office. So we're just doubling down on how often they're together, when they're together, what is on the program, and how they collaborate remotely, as well as having these clusters where we meet up a few days a month or a week for that matter to collaborate.
That's fascinating. Let's talk more about culture. You mentioned that it's an area, having spent time with folks at Factbird, everyone loves being part of the team. It's a very special culture. When you think back to what you've been working on the last few years, what do you think have been some of the best ways to build and maintain that culture in a transatlantic company, especially with the remote folks that you just mentioned distributed across the US? What's working for you guys?
First of all, I think it's extremely important that you sell the vision in terms of where you're going. People are attracted by the mission, they're attracted by the vision. They want to participate in something. For me, culture is the combination of the values that you define and the behavior that you see. And hopefully those two correspond. If they correspond, you have culture. So if they understand the vision, mission, and values, and you can find people that are passionate, buy into that, aka you get the behavior, that drives and builds the culture. So I think that's extremely important, that you draw in talent that have vested and are bought into market-making companies, right? We're here to build something unique. You have an opportunity to participate. Yeah, we cannot pay you the world, but you have an opportunity to make it your mark with a European-style approach where we offer autonomy, offer direct access to leadership. We offer a chance to shape the company as it looks now, where it goes. And who knows, if you have talent, if you have wit, if you have hard work and grit, you will progress accordingly, and great opportunities will await for you as well. It's not to say that they're bootstrapping and they'll go for scrap. You will need to pay a fare, but maybe a more creative compensation package where equity is involved as part of what you attract them with. And then on the practical elements of driving culture, I don't want to say that we have nailed it, because we're headquarter culture here in Copenhagen and then we're remote culture. But for me, there's a lot of leaning back into how did we adjust and manage culture during Corona, and connect with people, always being available, always tapping in and just having social interactions. Have some scheduled social activities. It could be Friday bingo or happy hour or whatever you have. So way more interactions to compensate for the lack of social glue that happens around the coffee machine.
You mentioned talent. You mentioned bringing people in who get bought into your vision. The reality is it's a super competitive market for top talent, particularly when it comes to go-to-market talent in the US. And sometimes as a European company entering that market, it can be a bit like you're going in with one hand tied behind your back, right? There can be a negative selection bias of folks who like the idea of working for this kind of smaller European company.
Yeah.
So How have you approached that? Because, it's such a killer team now that you're building. How have you overcome that drawback? Does it all come down to kind of mission and vision, or have there been some tactics, advisors, etc., that have been a key unlock for you in that?
I think I referenced one of our board members who said, hire slow and fire fast. I'll be the first to say that we have made, the employee churn in the US is higher than Europe. We've had to take chances. But if you do your due diligence, if you have more eyes on the talents, the candidates, if you assess more holistically and go into what is the job actually about, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Do they adhere to the values in the combination of that? Then I think you're de-risking. We have, for selected hires in the US, started introducing recruitment agencies within the industry, simply in respect of some of the mistakes we've made early on. I wish that someone had told me how different the culture was and helped me a bit more in this early stage. I think we are at the point where we are now getting it and have learned from it, but it's been time-consuming and very expensive process throughout the year. So, I think we've learned a lot, and I don't want to say that we got this from day one. And if that's one of the things that I can pass on to others in this early stage, then that would be one of the recommendations. But for sure, going back to what I said, selling the vision, the mission, having the opportunity of establishing a category leader within your field, that also drives a long thing. And there are a lot of people out there in established organizations, talent, that wherever they are, they've met the ceiling of professional growth in their organization, and they are prepared to take a bigger professional risk by entering into a startup at the expense of leveraging that knowledge to move faster. It's the American market, right? The American dream still sells in America.
Okay, I want to get just tactical for a minute. So you're in an interview with a potential new sales rep over in the US market.
Yeah.
Of course, you hope great at selling themselves, their experience, but what are one or two ways that you have to cut through that? Are there questions you like to ask, or what's your approach?
Yeah, the script for the interview process is long. It's getting better and better, and it's getting more and more holistic. But if we're talking about early stage interviews related to go-to-market hires, aka salespeople, and it could be AEs, it could be customer success, I would always want to tap into a story where they tell me about a time when you had to sell a new category or disrupt an incumbent. What worked and what didn't work. It's extremely important to understand the mindset that they come with. They understand at this point in time, they may be coming from an industry leader, have faced what I just mentioned earlier, that they couldn't progress further. Now they want to take a chance. We don't have brand recognition, brand acknowledgement, so they have to understand what it takes to drive that. So that's the story that I always would like them to tell me about and be as specific as possible. You learn a lot about people. And then another point, which is kind of related, is what's the process for building a pipeline in a market where you have no recognition yet? What is it that you do? How do you overcome that? If they can be specific on that, and what I'm looking for is grit and creativity. I'm trying to figure out what it takes to get that meeting. And when they have that meeting, what it takes to articulate very precisely, very quickly, what is the juice of what you're selling and how they've done that in the past. Because they have no patience in America. They do however, have the understanding of cold calling. So they will give you a little bit of time and you got to seize that moment. And that's where I'm using parts of those.
Love that. And one key asset that I think you would have had in your journey into the US is you had some of these customers from Europe that had a footprint in the US. And one of the things we hear over and over again is the importance of customer referencing, referenceable leaders in a particular domain, or people who can vouch for you.
Yeah.
Share a bit about how you've approached that. There's this asset of a customer. What advice would you have for other leaders on how do you actually get the most out of that asset and drive additional customer wins from that starting point?
Yeah. So maybe two things on this. Europe PNs need to understand American rhetorics and what competition is all about. And you only have to watch the news to understand how the leader of the free world is claiming to be an expert if he's seen the headline. So if you have a reference customer, and we were, as mentioned earlier, we were lucky to have established domestic enterprise brands that weren't known in the US, play that big. You know, if you have, and I'm not telling you to lie, but if you're selling to Novo Nordisk, you can tell that you're selling to Novo Nordisk on this, or you can tell that you're selling on, I don't know if this capture, or selling on this. They want to hear that you are selling on this. So tell them that you're selling on this. And, you know, be bold, be aggressive, go out with confidence and say, we've got this. They will challenge you. And then you lean in and ask for their trust, set specific milestones, gates in order to validate that trust and ask for more. Ask for more. Get super close to your customers super early. There's nothing that represents face-to-face communications or trust in America. They will reward that. They will trust you if they can feel you, you know? I mean,
Yes.
we have customers that have $25 billion in revenue with hundreds of facilities. If they were to, you know, they need to trust and feel that we are all there for them, because that's what they're asking. So you have to take, as a CEO, you have to double down and commit to that, and you gotta be there for the team and for the customers. And will you get up from time to time? Absolutely. And you just gotta lie down, flat on your belly, and say, I did it, it's on me, and I'll do my utmost not to do it again. Don't promise you won't do it, but promise you'll do your utmost not to do it again. And they'll reward you for that. They like that.
Søren, that is great. I want to zoom in on your role, you personally. So you're based in Copenhagen, Denmark. You've got these massive, globally leading US customers. How do you approach that with your life? Are you traveling over there a lot? Do you rely on your team? Is it video? How do you square being in Europe with the value you just spoke to of being there in person and customers feeling the intensity and passion from you?
Yeah. I don't want to lie and say you can be a CEO, you know, and just, you know, work 40 hours a week. That's not going to happen, right? I'm not going to say that you can drive a global company and have global customers, but refuse to travel. But at the same time, the way that it operates is that you're not requested to be on site every 2 weeks. You're not. The Americans don't expect that. Key customers, I'm trying to the best of my ability to pin them down and say, I will come. I'll be there in 2 weeks. And they'll just go, I don't know where I am in 2 weeks. I'm traveling too much. So I don't have time. So a lot of the key meetings with CEOs as well is actually Teams or Zoom or whatever platform is being used. And they're used to that and they're okay with that. I've requested on CEO to CEO meetings many times that, I'll come over, happily invest and blah, blah. And we'll sit down an hour and they'll just listen. Let's just do 30 minutes. It's just a meet and greet. I just want to hear a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we can let our team sort out the rest. 30 minutes on Teams, that's fine. So but offer the availability to go out on site. And then let your team manage, and it's not to disrespect, but let them do the grind. Let them go on site. Let them do the site assessment. Let them do the consultancy and the project management on site if it's required and requested by the customers. So, you know, of course, you need to have a strong management team. You need to have a strong operations team. But I do not feel that I go to the US over and over again, luckily.
Søren, there will be a bunch of other CEOs of software companies tuning in, maybe some who haven't yet taken the plunge of expanding into the US market. You've mentioned some lessons learned, mistakes along the way. If you had to boil it down, you know, what are maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that you wish you had known those years ago before getting started over there that you could share?
Yeah, I think, I mean, and maybe this is a little bit cliche or stating the obvious, but I think there's, if we're to take a top three, maybe I'll add one more as I think, but a top three for the US expansion. Obviously, validate the product market fit before planting the flag. And for us, that was the 10, 12 customers, and the inbound interest. Send marketing digitally out in advance. We were lucky with the early customers, and then some inbound marketing. That was our product market fit validation. Has to be there. As a CEO, don't think that without the product market fit, you just make a massive bet and move out. That was point number one. Choose the launch model that balances the speed with the control that you want. So avoid rushing into full offices and headquarters without the go-to-market motion defined and super clear. So don't hire 5 people, hire 1 or 2 people to start out with. So that would be my point number 2. And on that one, maybe I can tell you, since you have already invested, I cheated a little bit by reading the book from Aaron Ross on from impossible to predictable. So there are many great SaaS playbooks out there in terms of how you scale this. Learn it, listen to it, listen to podcasts like this. But that would be my point number 2. Choose the launch model and the models that fits your operations, also your cash essentially, after the product market fit. And then the last one, I'll probably go back to the early investments in the enablement. Don't underestimate all the crap you got to sort out, the red tape you got to remove. Not only pricing, but there's a lot of legal, there's a lot of compliance, and a lot of readiness around that. There's a lot of complexity when you start to have salespeople in different states. It's complicated. You need time, you need capabilities, you need resources to manage that. So that would probably be a top 3. So product, launch model, and then the enablement.
Søren, this has been a whistle-stop tour through US expansion. Congrats to you and the team on the success that Factbird's having in that market and globally. It's a very exciting time.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out to come join us and share some insights. It's been great speaking with you as always. And I'll see you soon. Thanks again for being with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.